everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 12 of Vinland Saga. With the end of this episode, we will be at the halfway point of the season. Only halfway. Isn't that crazy? We're nearly like 3 months into watching this show this season, and we're only halfway there. It's kind of incredible, right? It's kind of awesome because I've loved this season so far. So the idea today that we're only halfway through, I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. We got lots more to go. And that's really, really exciting. I'm used to epic series, but they're only like 12 episode seasons. And so around this point, I'm like, oh man, it's the end. Nope. So that's really exciting. But last episode, we had a lot of things happening, so I've got some comments I want to talk about before we start, but we met a new character, old Bug Eyes. Canute is making decisions that will possibly involve Thorfinn and Ketil and the others, and they're none the wiser, and so it's going to be interesting. Olmar gave us all a good dose of secondhand embarrassment. It's a fun time all around for Vinland Saga, right? So, first of all, with episode 12, as we started, I will say that there were some people on Patreon that were saying, they were like, oh yeah, well, Bug Eyes' real name is Thorfinn. And I was like, okay, cool. But also, I mean, I'm glad that people felt the need to say that, but I don't want to know confirmation of things involving plot or characters, because I do consider that a spoiler. If it's not, if Leif doesn't come out and say, oh, well, his actual name is Thorfinn, then I don't want to know. Does that make sense? And I just don't want to open up a gateway, right? I don't want to say, oh, well, it's okay if you tell me this information about a character, but not this information, because that's a spoiler and this is not. I don't want to play that game. And I honestly, it gets too much so for me to keep track of. So just to be safe, don't tell me any clarifications or hints or clues about the plot or the characters. Just don't. And that way I won't be spoiled, right? So that's the easiest way to go about it. But apparently Bug Eyes' real name is Thorfinn, which there's all the Thor's names, like Thor's, Thorgil, Thorfinn, Thorkel. It's just like John, right? It's Johnston, Jonathan, John, Johnny. It's one of those things. So that's okay, but just please no future spoilers. Jin Toki talks about Canute's phrase, this is nothing, possibly meaning that the emotional burdens are nothing in terms of his overall goals, and that he can manage just fine, which makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you clarified that, Jin Toki, but also, is he fine? He's talking to a severed head. Is he okay? I don't think Canute's fine. He just thinks that he's fine, right? And how does this compare to Thorfinn, and which is better? That's a really good question, because yeah, you have on the one hand Canute, who is like, oh, emotional burdens, never heard of them. I don't need emotions. I'm just going to like power through them with my iron will, and everything will be perfectly fine, as he talks to the severed head of his dead father. And then you have Thorfinn, who has confronted his demons head on and realizes that the emotional burden is something he will have to bear to move forward and keep his sanity and his humanity. So I think Thorfinn's the better off one, because yeah, even though it is a lot more trauma and, pain and suffering to face your demons and carry the weight of your sin with you, in the long run, you will end up becoming a better person, and your soul and your humanity will be all the better for it. Whereas Canute, who's like, never heard of emotions, who needs those? Like, he's trying to wipe out and forego that humanity, but I feel like that's going to come back and bite Canute, and is just going to spiral him further into madness. Because I don't see it ending well for Canute if he keeps on the path that he's on. And maybe that will be the exciting thing, is to see how far he goes. How far will he fall? Will Thorfinn have to help lift him up out of the darkness? We'll see, right? It's definitely something really cool to look forward to, and see how these two characters, who are kind of going in opposite directions, how they end up developing and flourishing or falling as the series goes on. And Alexander Q kind of touches upon that, saying, we talked in the last reaction about Canute wanting a utopia, but Alexander Q points out, is the way he's establishing it, it's like Canute wants to control the utopia. Yeah, and is that really a utopia if there's one person running it? Whereas Thorfinn is like, he doesn't want anybody running it. Utopia means it's your own freedom. It's free from people controlling it, right? And so, again, you have these very, very distinct ideologies. I also like that Alexander Q noted that Thorfinn looks like both his dads. He's carrying pictures of both Askeladd and Thor's with him, which it's like, yes. So I really enjoyed seeing Canute last episode and meeting Bug Eyes. I like Bug Eyes a lot. I'm excited to see more of him. And then, of course, seeing Leif is always a joy. But I don't know. I'm a little concerned about Wolf. I'm a little concerned about Ketil. I'm a little concerned about Olmar because it seems like he's going to be used by Canute, bless his heart, and he will know none the wiser. And then I feel a little bit bad for Thorgal because I feel like Thorgal is smart enough to figure some things out, but that might put him in trouble. So we'll see, right? But so those are my comments. Before we start, though, I want to give a quick shout out over to Patreon. Thank you guys so much to the philanthropy tier of patrons who help support me. So over on Patreon, I have 3 tiers. The first tier gets access to the Discord and gets to vote in the polls. The second tier gets that alongside getting things a week early, so you can go ahead and see next week's video at the same time you're seeing this one on YouTube. And the philanthropy tier gets all of that, plus they get mentions in this video, as well as if we have a tie, they get to be the tiebreakers. So fun times. But I also really appreciate those in the philanthropy tier because you guys are just awesome. You just support me in doing what I like doing, and you enjoy hearing my conversations about these Viking men and the many layers of this manga adapted into anime that is so beautiful. So a special thanks goes out to Dana, to Anime Annie, to Edgar, to Truck, to Kenny, to Nameless Monster, to Tyrone, to Shimoyama, to Arjo, as well as to Be Happy and Translucent Men. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your support. All of my love. So, yeah, I'm actually really excited. Last episode was kind of a setup episode, so I'm very curious what are we going to get in this one. So, let's find out, shall we? We are going to start episode 12 of Vinland Saga, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and season 2, y'all. Make sure my subtitles are on. They are. Let's go. Well, this episode was ominous and foreboding. Oh my god, and gory! I have told people in the Discord that I'm easily scared. And I see some pretty gory stuff on the farm, but seeing like eye shots and stuff like that, I'm like, what? So I'm very sensitive with my own eyes. And so like I barely, put contacts in or whatever, but I'm very sensitive with my eyes. So anytime somebody like pokes an eye or something, I'm like, ugh. And so the coin through the eye, what the fudge? That was just insanity. So interesting. So Canute and all, they were just gonna go to Ketil's farm with 102 men. So I guess Canute is going, along with Gunnar and 70 of Floki's men and Floki and Wolf. Like the whole gang's just going to Ketil's farm, like 100 guys just to go subjugate it and take it over. Oh my gosh, as Thorfinn's like, him and Einar just plowing the field, plowing with each other, just, having a good time. We can't have nice things though. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's like the sunset before the dark days are coming, right? And it's all coming to a head, right? It's all coming to a head because we have Leif and Bug Eyes along with Ketil and Thorgal and Olmar are all coming back to the island where Einar and Thorfinn and Arnheid and Snake is, along with Sverkel, we think. And then Canute and their forces, like everything's converging. Everything is converging and it's all gonna go down. And I'm a bit worried. I mean, I think the show has been smart enough to demonstrate to us that Einar is strong enough to hold his own. He did fight off 5 retainers by himself, barehanded. So and that was just barehanded. Like he could fight himself off like a bunch of guys. So I feel like Einar can defend himself, and especially if he has something worth protecting now. He knows now what he took for granted with letting his mom and his sister die. So with Arnheid, with Thorfinn, he knows he has people that are worth protecting, right? Thorfinn, who has swore to peace and nonviolence, I'm curious how this is all going to go down for him. I feel like, again, like I said last episode, there's going to have to be a balance where Thorfinn kind of becomes like Thor's in the sense that he doesn't want to just outright slaughter people like Thorgil did. Thorgil's kind of, again, the extreme example. He's very Bjorn in his maneuvers. But I feel like Thorfinn's like, if I've got to defend myself, I will, but I'm not going to just outright kill people. I feel like Thorfinn is going to be like, I will incapacitate you, but not kill you, right? Whereas Canute is just... We're going to talk about Canute. We're going to talk about Canute and compare him to another anime character here in a wee bit. When we get to that end with him. Is it bad that I really enjoy him talking to his father's dead head, even though his father's dead head is Canute? Like, it's just him talking to himself. Like, he's just slowly descending deeper into madness. I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, so there's some interesting things going on in this set of chapters, right? I get everybody like passing stuff around and selling the bread. I instantly got Beauty and the Beast vibes where it's like, bonjour, good day, even though we're like not in France. And then poor Olmar. I want to also make note, this little kid has like a big basket of bread loaves. She's just chunking them down. Like, girl, I don't blame you. Get them carbs. Do it. And poor Omar, they're like, which one? That guy, the one lying face down on the table. So let's go through this scene here. Omar is just kind of down on himself, right? And I do feel for Omar, because I feel like Omar, he's trying to find his purpose and trying to find his place within his own family and his own self. So we're going to put Omar right over here, right? And I feel for Omar because Omar has a lot against him, right? He's the little brother, right? And oftentimes, younger siblings, especially when their older sibling gets accolades or something like that, or has some like natural talent or is a prodigy or whatever, a lot of times younger siblings can be in the shadow of their older siblings. I have a friend that is the younger sibling of like their sister was this amazing track star, like top athlete, top of the class, valedictorian, did everything perfect, was like Olga in Hey Arnold, right? And my friend was like Helga. And she was always mad because her parents were just like, oh my gosh, your sister's the most perfect person. And she got the scraps. She was just always left in the shadows. So I feel it's kind of like Olmar's thing. I feel like Olmar... Ketil, to Ketil's, benefit, Ketil is trying to give Olmar an out. I feel like Ketil realizes, he's like, my son Olmar is not like Thorgil. Thank goodness. Is not like him. He is not a violent, prone to violence person. He's just not. And Ketil is trying to give Olmar a benefit. He's like, hey, but how do you tell your son that? How do you tell your son, hey, I realize you're kind of soft and you're not like hardcore like your brother, so I'm going to give you the farm so you don't have to go to battle, right? I feel like that's what Ketil's been trying to do, is be like, hey, here's the farm. You don't have to be like your brother. You could be your own person. But to Olmar, without saying it, I feel like Olmar believes that that's his dad feeling sorry for him, being like, here's the farm. And, maybe Olmar doesn't want to be a farmer. Maybe he does want to go out and do other things, but he doesn't know his purpose. And the only thing he can think of to get away from the farm is, well, I'll just join Knute's army and I can go be my own person. I'll be the hero just like my brother. But Olmar is not like Thorgil, and that's not a bad thing at all. So... he had the secondhand embarrassment of going and telling Canute, and, Olmar is a very passionate person and says a lot of things, but he doesn't think before he talks. He just says stuff, and then after the fact, it's like, oh my God, why did you do that? Right? Whereas Olmar is a talk before you think. Thorgil is an act before you think kind of person. He just does things, and you're like, okay, which he's absolutely terrifying too. We'll talk about Thorgil when we get to it. But I want to go back to this conversation. For lost love, we'll talk about that line. Talking about Canute, the youngster. Okay, I see. He looks like someone who'd do that. So I guess somebody who'd, take it up with the king. He's the guy who lost to a pig. Yeah, he could not. He drank all the wine and then passed out drunk. He couldn't chop up a pig. Guys like him really do exist. So yeah, guys who have balls but nothing to back it up. I'm amazed he had the balls to say he wanted to join the Kingsguard. Yep. So, Brode, who is a guy that ends up being murdered in this episode first, Brode kind of chuckles about it and says, so what did you want? All we have to do is tell him he's been rejected. That's it. And this guy says, that's right. All you need to do is convey the message. So he's rather mysterious. So I want to know, like, we have our mystery man, mystery assassin with the coins and the green cloak. Now, he could be anybody, right? He could be anybody. He could be connected with Floki. He could be connected with anybody. He's just there telling these guys that are a part of Canute's army that they have to go tell Olmar he's been rejected. So let's break down what Canute's plan was. So Canute and Wolf, because they're kind of the masterminds behind this plan. Their whole goal is to take Ketil's farm for themselves. They want to reprimand the farm, take it over, take all the people that work there, take the slaves, and make it something that is the kingdoms and not Ketil's anymore, right? I'm kind of like well, thank you for being a kind citizen. Now I'm going to take your home. Hope that's cool. We need to use it. It's for the war effort. You understand, right? One of those scenarios. So they know that they can't quite just outright take it, because that will get around and people will start to panic, which is smart on Canute's part, because when Canute's like, oh, we'll just reprimand the farm. It's our, we'll just take it back. We'll reclaim it. I was like thinking, people are going to get really, kind of up in arms, aren't they, if you just outright start taking other people's land for your own. So it makes sense. They're like, we don't want to start a kerfuffle. Let's not do that. So what we're going to do is we are going to frame Ketil. What we're going to do is have these guardsmen or army men, however you want to put it, we're going to have them rile Olmar up. And then I think they had every intention of killing Olmar. They're going to kill Olmar after he gets riled up, and then reprimand Ketil for his son starting the fight. But what they don't realize is that the cloaked man, because you may be thinking, and I was like, well, if they're just riling him up, what's the point? If Olmar gets killed, then how are they going to reprimand Ketil? It seems like the appropriate punishment would be, well, your son died for riling up the guards. Why does Ketil have to get arrested? But the cloaked man, I think he was always going to kill the man fighting Olmar. I think Thorgil just kind of helped the situation for the cloaked man, honestly. I think that the cloaked man always was going to kill the man that was fighting Olmar, which would lead Olmar to getting killed. And it would still lead to the reprimand and arrest of Ketil. I think that in the long term, however the fight went down, whether Olmar died, whether he, without killing anybody, whether he killed a man and then died, whether he lived somehow, I think the idea was that because someone in that group of guys originally was going to die by the cloaked man's hands, and then it was going to get pushed onto Olmar, whether Olmar lived or died, and that was going to come back to lead to Ketil's arrest, being like, your son killed one of our king's guard, you have to pay the price. That was the idea. And so that would give incentive for Canute to swoop in and take Ketil's property and have justification for it. Be like, oh, well, I guess I'll let you go, but in exchange, I'm going to take your land. Like that seems like the setup, and that makes sense. And then it won't be as suspicious, because the people will all be like, well, he kind of deserved it. He fought the king's men and killed one of his guards. It all makes sense, but things didn't quite go according to plan. He's like, I'm not sure I can keep myself from doing more. And the guy in the cloak, he's like, you want to mock him? And he's like, yeah. So honestly, the cloaked man really takes advantage of this situation, because all the cloaked man told him to do was reject him. That's it. That's all he told him to do. But these guys are the ones that took it a step further. And he says, go on, I'll buy you drinks later. Like, he actually does, kind of spur him on, though, in that moment, right? This mysterious man that looks devilish with the cloak and the green. What? I don't want to know his name. I want to find that out later because he seems like he's going to be a player in all this. This snake in the grass. What if his name was like Viper and he was like Snake's brother or some shit? I don't know. But yeah, so the green cloak, he egged them on. He egged them on. Now, I feel like he works with Canute, but I'm not entirely sure. It feels like he's also working with Canute. He just doesn't outright say it. And so they go on, and like as a group, they walk over there. And he makes the comment as he kills the butterfly in the darkness. Yeah, he shoots the thing through the butterfly. What the fudge? As the wings fall. And then he says, you lot look just as stupid as he does. Yeah, so that's kind of... The cloaked man makes this comment, right? The cloaked man says that the king's men are the same as Olmar and theoretically Thorgil, right? Saying, and you can tie that to the fact they're using violence to egg each other on, which is pointless. They're supposed to all be on the same side, right? Why are you doing duels and violence? That's dumb. You guys are supposed to be, you're supposed to be fighting other people, supposedly, not each other. Like, well, what the hell? Like, Thorgil's a member of the army too, and he kills like his own men, right? So there, again, we talk about how Askeladd hated the Danes. He was like, they're all a bunch of savage idiots. The idea is that Thorgil, yes, he was standing up for his brother. But his brother clearly did not want to fight, and he made him fight. And then Thorgil basically kills his own men. Kills his own men under the king. What the heck? Because he was working with wolves, so he was part of the king's men. Like, Thorgil, what the hell? He's, again, I feel like Thorgil is like a very Bjorn-like character that just, like, he's like Bjorn and Thorkel mixed together. He just likes violence, and he's this big broody man. What the fudge? So I don't know who this guy is with the cloak, but he's interesting. And so then, yeah, we have the OP, we get past it, and then Omar wakes up to Brood, who's come. And poor Omar. Omar knows exactly why they're there. He knows they're there to tell him he's been rejected. He's not an idiot. Omar, you know, is very impulsive, and he doesn't think before he speaks, but he's not dumb. He knows why they're there. And it's understandable that he gets flustered because those guys are making fun of him to his face. Like, that's so mean. And they're like, you lost to a pig. And yeah, and for Omar, who already feels, you know, insecure about himself, it's obvious that he would feel terrible about that. And what's interesting is that in this moment, Omar, if you look at him when he looks down and he's all pained, he looks a lot like Ketil. A lot like his dad. That's the funny thing, is that Thorgil kind of, I'm sure, gets the credit for seeming like his father in appearance, but Omar, when he has that head down, he looks a lot like Ketil, and Omar's personality is more like Ketil's, right? So it's no wonder Ketil didn't want him to get involved. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for him. He wants to defend himself. And he had one ambition, and it was to join Canute's army and prove himself, and he gets rejected. Not only rejected, but mocked and laughed at. So of course he gets mad. And he's a young man. He's like 20. So, you know, he's this hot-blooded guy that he gets mad and swings a sword around. But I'm like, he's not truly a fighter. He's just not, right? And he just gets mad and upset, and that's when Thorgil notices that they're having the fight, right? And Omar was not going to win. Not by himself. There's no way. And the one guy says he's as pathetic as I was told. So yeah, so here's the deal. They, in order to arrest Ketil, they need Olmar to kill someone. So the cloaked man is going to take the coin, flip it, and get it to where the one guy dies. He's like, which one of you is going to be stupid enough to fight Olmar? Because you're the one I'm going to have to kill for this all to work. That way, if Olmar kills one of the king's men, that's going to be incentive. They establish it's against the law to duel, so that's going to be our rate. Because, yeah, that's the thing. They say that Canute has made a law. Canute is law that there's no dueling. Which is hilarious, right? Can we talk about that? That it is hilarious that Canute has all these anti-violence laws when he's killing people left and right. Is it hypocrisy? Just a wee bit. But yeah, I think that's hilarious. He's like, don't be dueling inside the city. I mean, I'm poisoning people and taking control of everything, but it's for my utopia, so I get a free pass. And that's what's so insane about Canute's plan, is that Canute's like, I will do whatever violent act I need to and kill whoever I need to create this perfect place that you can live in peace. It's baffling, right? It's great. I'm just like, what? But yeah, so the cloaked man was hired to make it look like Olmar killed this man, and that's how it was gonna go. But Olmar's so bad at the duel, the cloaked man's like, man, this is really not gonna be easy to make this, look convincing like he actually killed him. He's got to time it just right. And that is when Thorgil shows up. And Thorgil is a big, thick, beefy man. He really is. Like, them tree trunk thighs. He's like he makes, Olmar's not a small guy. Olmar's pretty tall. But Thorgil makes him look, like, minuscule in comparison. So, yeah. Everybody, I like there's this one guy drawn in the background that's like this, like, come on. I love the animation on that. That's great. That's a really cute little animation thing. But, yeah, Thorgil has this whole thing about being a warrior and about standing up and fighting and about what you do if you are insulted. So, what does he say here? He's like, if you are insulted, there's only two things to do. He says, listen to me, Omar. You kill or you die. I'm like, well, no. But that's really cute. So yeah, Olmar's whole thing is that Thorgil tells him that when you are insulted, you either kill or you die. And that is a very Viking way of thinking, I suppose. But as we've seen from Thorfinn, as we've seen from Thors, as we've seen from Askeladd, you don't really have to do any of those things. You can find other things to do. I would say even when Askeladd was insulted, he could find a way around, like he could trick someone into like a bad situation, but it wasn't technically his fault. Like I'm thinking back to when they looted the palace and like the ship and stuff and they took all the gold away. Remember those fun times? Remember those simple times? Those are great when they were just pirating. It feels like forever ago. But yeah, this whole deal of absolutes, right? That you either have to kill or die. There's nothing in between. And I feel like there's an interesting way in which Thorfinn is kind of proving that there are exceptions. There are exceptions to that rule. You don't just kill or die. No, you can find ways to live. It's not easy, and it's not something that will always be, comfortable, but you can make it work, right? But Thorgil is in that old season 1 mindset, right? As so many other characters are. If you can't kill him, you'll die here. Well, and there is something to what he says there, because in this situation, there's not really a running away option. So that's kind of, this episode is dealing with a lot of little harsh realities that you are faced with this situation of you either fight or you die. One of those things, there is no flight option. So what do we do if that's the case, right? What do we do? And there's no talking it out, right? That's kind of the sad thing about this, is that these individuals, they're humans. There should be that third option. There could be that third option if you just created it. That's the most insane thing about this episode, is that these are all human beings. Like, they have brains, they have intelligence. You just have to create the third option, right? You just have to say, wait, I don't want to kill anybody and I don't want to die. Why can't we talk this out? Why can't we avoid this? Why do we have to duel? And I feel like Thorfinn is asking those questions, being like, why do we have to do this? Why is it this way? And I feel like that's important that he's asking those questions, but Thorgil is stuck in this mindset, like it's the way that it always has been, so it must be this way. And it's like, but does it? Does it have to be this way? And he's like, I won't allow you to go on living without addressing this insult. I'm like, and in poor Olmar's case, he's like, well, my brother is threatening me that if I don't do something about this myself, he's going to do something about this. So what do we do? I felt for Olmar in this. He says, oh, fight and become a man. I was like, that's another thing that is very much touched upon in this. The idea of becoming a man. Right? And that you have to fight to do so. And I don't know. I feel like Thor's believed that becoming a man involves something very different. And even Askeladd, I feel like for Askeladd, it wasn't just the fact that you fought that made you a man. It was the fact that maybe you knew why you were fighting, or that you were fighting for a certain reason, and that made you a man. So lots of interesting concepts getting brought up with Thorgal here and Olmar. And he's like, go on. He's like, imagine it, Olmar. Imagine the moment you cut off your enemy's head. Now, there are two types of people that are exemplified in this moment, right? You have the idea of the man who delights in death. And then you also have the man who is sick of it. Right? Thorgal is like, just relish in the death, like relish in the pit of despair and Valhalla, everything. Like, isn't it just wonderful? And then you have people like Thorfinn who's like, no, that's hell. I don't want that. No, I don't. And it's one of those things where these characters, you either embrace it and it's part of you, or you completely get away from it. It's either one or the other. It's either you, or it's something that you either embrace and relish in, or it's something you want no part of whatsoever. And I feel like Thorfinn was always the latter. He was just forced into battle because, and then he kind of had that whole thing with revenge and he just sought it out. But now he's like, nope, don't like it, don't want it. And poor Olmar does not want to relish in it. He thought that's what he wanted, but the more Thorgal talks about like spirits and blood and guts and everything, Thorgal's getting all aroused by it, and Olmar's like, I want nothing to do with this. Like, it's just, and by the end of it, when he's on that boat, like with his head in his hands, it's heartbreaking because it's like he's killed a man and now he's like, I didn't want that burden. I didn't want that. Like, it's just, it's so damn sad, right? And then, God, but Thorgal. Yeah, so I'm really glad that, real glad I'm not rewatching that part with the coin. Ugh! That part with the coin in the eye was disgusting. I was like, oh my God, show. What we doing? Oh my God. And then poor Olmar seeing the knife stuck in his throat. And everybody's like, woo! It's like, oh my God. And then of course all the other guys start to fight. But Thorgal just takes the opportunity of seeing this battle to be like, oh yeah, now I get in on it. I'll help you, brother. It's a duel now. You were only supposed to take on this one guy, so leave all the rest to me. And he just slaughters them. Like, he was like cleaving them in two. It was just, it was overkill, y'all. But poor Olmar, when he's like, did I kill him? I mean, you did, along with help from the cloaked man, right? But yes, you did. And so I feel like there's a connection to Thorfinn. I feel like there's a connection to Thorfinn with Olmar. And I'm wondering if Olmar will talk to Thorfinn about it because maybe he knows Thorfinn's killed someone, or will Einar tell him that? I feel like I want Thorfinn and Olmar to have a conversation. I want Thorfinn to become this like Zen monk, and so Olmar comes to him being like, what do I do? And Thorfinn's like, well, here's how you get past it. You take the weight of that death and you just carry it with you. Like, I want Thorfinn to be like this like Zen monk priest that comes around, and does all that, which we haven't seen Willibald anymore. He's gone as far as we know, so Thorfinn's got to take his place, I guess. But I just feel so bad for him. And yeah, all these guys die to Thorgal. It's just, and Thorgal is just embodying this Viking way that's always been, and Omar is just like the exception where he doesn't want any part of it. And realizes he doesn't want any part of it. Like he may have thought he wanted to be in Canute's army and wanted to be in the war. I think this has proven that no, he does not. Not at all. So that's really sad. But That's all they needed was for this scuffle to break out. And then Ketil shows up. They're like, oh, must have been a rock or something that got in his eye. I'm like, I don't think it was a rock. No, I'm glad Olmar has seen it so that he knows that maybe there's a chance there was something else involved. Poor Ketil. Ketil, much like Olmar, he freaks out. And Olmar just looks really sad. And Ketil's just like, I'm gone for 5 minutes and you guys muck this up this bad? And he's like, calm down. You want me to calm down? He's like, he defended his honor. You're his father. You should be praising him. But Thorgal doesn't get that Ketil's not like that. And it's so heartbreaking. They had swords. They must have known insulting would be costly. I'm like, But it's like, Thorgal is tying this to a world where just talking to someone the wrong way could get you killed. And I'm like, no, it should not be that way. It shouldn't be that way at all. But here we are. And Ketil's just like, no wonder he's scared of him. Like, it makes sense that Ketil is scared of Thorgal, because Thorgal is quite terrifying. But yeah, he's like, we did nothing wrong. Duels happen all the time. And Omar just looks so downtrodden and sad in this moment. But yeah, it's like they've outlawed duels, and Thorgal just doesn't seem... Thorgal's like, oh, well, those are just guidelines. They're not gonna arrest us over something as paltry as that. People break them all the time, and they don't get arrested. But that's the thing. It's still a law. So it's kind of one of those things where, unfortunately, Canute and the others might have casually, like, let it go and not thought about it. But now that it's to their benefit, they can arrest Ketil. So it's... Yeah, and then the King's Guard show up. This part, though, where they see all three of them standing there, and they're like, what's going on here? Olmar is alive. And they're like, oh, yeah, and Ketil's here, too. Who's the other? Like, this did not go as planned. They planned for Olmar to be dead, for one of the other guards to be dead, possibly, and for them to show up and be like, oh, what was this? And go arrest Ketil for it. Things did not go according to plan either way, right? And of course, Thorgal's like, you've done nothing wrong. And I like that they're like, oh no, we have a law. You've broken it. You're in trouble. And Thorgal's like, what is this shit? I like that Thorgal's like, this is not how it's supposed to go down. And of course, he fights back. The moment they were like, oh, we need you to put your hands behind your back. I'm like, he just massacred 4 guys for talking shit to his little brother. He's not gonna give you that sword. That's cute. I was like, nope. And then it's like a ballroom blitz out here in the middle of town. And I like that Ketil's like, please stop. I just love that Ketil's like, why are my sons like this to me? Man, and he just gets Thorgal gouging his eyes out. Oh my God. Blech. Nope. And he says, why did you allow Olmar to win? And then he said he said you should heed people's warnings. We did it to arrest Ketil. I followed Captain Wolf's orders. So yeah, they were basically using Olmar. They knew he was young, he was dumb, and he would be easy to manipulate. So they sent a bunch of guys to rile him up, get him to maybe kill a guy or injure him, start a duel that was illegal, and then even if he ended up dead, they could still use it to arrest Ketil. Which is pretty damn manipulative, right? The fact that they just used this kid that wanted... That's the other thing that gets me, too. Is that they are using their own citizens to... advance their agenda. Like in the last episode, Canute's like, oh, it's nothing personal. It's for the sake of our people, for the utopia I'm creating. I've got to use certain people to, meet the ends. The ends justify the means. It's like, who's this utopia for? That's the big question, right? Who's this utopia for? Because at the end of the day, I think Thorfinn, in wanting a utopia, he wants it for everyone. He doesn't want anybody to be a slave or for there to be violence. And I think he will eventually change it to he doesn't want there to be violence unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Unless you have to defend yourself. Then you may have to. But to talk it out, to realize each other's perspectives, which is a idealistic thing that I can get behind, right? But Canute has this whole thing about this utopia, and I'm like, but if you're willing to use anybody and kill anybody to get where you want, who's benefiting from the utopia? Is it just you? Is it your select group of people? Are you going to eventually use them if they threaten you? Or find you not worthy of staying in utopia and paradise? Like, it's so twisted that I'm like, I don't think you'll ever... I think the way that Canute is doing it, I don't think he will ever get utopia. I don't think it's possible, right? I don't think it's even on the table, but he can't be convinced of that. So interesting. And so Thorgel's like, well, guess we have to go now that we know that Canute has his sights on us and he's coming after us. And God, I joked about, an Attack on Titan character, but Thorgel's all excited. Thorgel, all of the Thors, right? Thorkel and Thorgel are both like head over heels for battle. They're like, if Thorkel ever met Thorgel, they would probably like bro arm wrestle it out and then just lick each other's bodies. Like after a hot sweaty battle, right? I just feel like it's a SpongeBob meme where his tongue's out, like licking something. Like those two would just have it out because they'd want to battle each other. Like maybe it's probably good that Thorgel and Thorkel have not met. It's probably for the best. Asgeir is like, please don't let this happen. And so then, yeah, we go to the top of the barracks, right? We go to the top of the watchtower where Wolf and them are. And so we see the man in the cloak. Okay, the man in the cloak is standing there. He's one of the king's men. Okay, so yes, he's working with them. And Canute can pull off a lot of fashionable looks. He has this beautiful red cloak that looks very good on him. I like it. And he says, so Ketil's family escaped. Yep. He says, oh, I'm sorry, Your Majesty. Wolf saying it. I sent men to secure their ships and lodgings, but they haven't been found. We're currently searching for them. It's my fault that we failed to capture Thorgel. Yeah, Thorgel's the one that's the dangerous one in this group. And Canute's like, well, he sounds like a skilled warrior. And so, yeah, okay, we see the guy that was in the green cloak. He doesn't look as threatening when he's out, but he still has like a little chin strap, like little goatee. Yeah, he doesn't look nearly as threatening without his ominous green cloak on, but still, he says he was a good subordinate. Yeah, about that. Canute says it doesn't affect our plans. Like, even if they leave, he's like, now we have an excuse to punish them. Yeah, he's like, they're fugitives, so we were going to arrest them either way, and now we have an excuse to go get them. Although, the lengths at which they are going to get this land are a wee bit extreme if you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Because it's like, what? Like, well, Thorgel did kill the other Kingsguard. Like, originally only 4 guys died. If they chased after them with 100 men because they killed 4 guys that were, like, subpar army men, would that really have justified it? Could people have questioned that? Maybe. But the moment Thorgel, like, killed the Kingsguard to escape, yeah, you've got that. You've got fleeing. You've got, basically traitorous actions. Yeah, now you have a reason to go and bring this army to Ketil's farm to reprimand and arrest everybody. Seems legit, right? Seems legit. But yeah, he's like, now they have their excuse to punish them. As planned, we'll head to Ketil's farm. So yeah, Canute is going now. Good. If Ketil isn't there, then that's fine. If he is and resists us, we'll just overwhelm him. Yeah, which, I mean, he says mobilize 32 of your guard, we'll get Floki 70, and we got 102. I'm like, Snake's gonna get in on this, so okay. Snake's gonna protect that old man till he dies, right? I'm concerned about Spherical, y'all. I'm just gonna say it. I'm concerned about Spherical. I don't like where this is headed because everybody's been like, where is he? He's old. We need to, like, what's gonna happen? And he says 32 of his guard and 70 of Floki's. I like that. I want to just point out, we're taking 70 of Floki's Yams Vikings, which sounds like, it's giving Floki a lot of credit because they're waiting 3 days for him to arrive. But it's also like, we're going to, like, all of Floki's men are expendable. We're only taking 32 of our guys, just in case, right? When will Floki arrive? And he's like, oh, in 3 days. 3 days from Yamsburg. And he's like, okay, then we'll leave at dawn 3 days from now. And then he's like, leave me. I need to talk to my father's head. Which is, okay. Which is crazy because talking to his father's head means he's going to talk to himself because the head is just his own subconscious, right? So Canute is still communing with the father's head. I just need a scene like for Thorfinn and Canute to be stuck together at some point in this series, and for them to be like stuck in a cave or something, and Thorfinn's like thinking things out, and Canute starts talking to himself, and it's the head, and Thorfinn's like, "Are you okay?" Like, I just need that to happen and be like, "Are we okay? Or do you know what you're doing? Do you realize you're talking to yourself? Okay, cool. Glad we've got that. Glad we've got that under control." Yeah, but God, his expression, yeah. And they're like, "Oh, yes, Your Majesty, we'll leave you alone to your thoughts." Mm-hmm. The expression that Canute makes, though, when he's looking down and everything is just kind of like blurry for a second, it's interesting. And there's like that black lizard that like crawls across there. And just his face, he looks so pissed off. Like, he's mad. He's mad that those people escaped. He's mad he didn't get what he... I don't know why he makes that face. He looks angry. Is he mad because he's thinking of his father? Is he mad because he feels like he's acting like his father and that's why the head comes up? But his expression, he looks so mad. I'm probably going to ask Discord what they think about why he makes that expression. Like, what is the reason for it? Because it's like a combination of things. Is he making that expression because he's mad that Ketil escaped and now he has to go after them and he can't just do this a simpler way? Is he mad because he realizes that he's doing the same type of moves that his father would have done? Is he mad because of that? Is he mad because he realizes that he's talking to himself and he's the way that he is? Is he mad because things are... I'm just curious. Like, I'm curious what y'all think down below why he makes that expression. Because it's such... I'm going to put it up here. It's such a beautiful expression, but so pained. Like, it's just... And I feel like whenever he makes expressions like this, it's the real Canute. It's not an act. So, very curious. Because at that point... That's when old Daddy Head shows up. He's like, like just pops out, you know. It's like a werewolf in London. And then he says, "What are you laughing about, King Swin?" And he says, "Oh, don't be so angry." He's like, "Why shouldn't a father be pleased that his son is beginning to resemble himself?" So I guess that's what it is. Like, Canute's mad that he's seeming more like his dad, which very much like his father indeed. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I love that we can't see Swin's eyes. They're all carved out. Mm-hmm. And then Canute's like, well, he doesn't respond to that immediately, right? He says, "Keep going." Oof. And all of the hair just flies up. It makes it look like he's going Super Saiyan. "You'll need to pile up plenty of bodies to reach the top." Which is a very curious metaphor, right? Because with Canute, you have the idea that Canute, to be on top, here's our boy Canute with his little crown and his cape, and here's all these dead bodies. For Canute, that is a source of power, right? He has to climb atop the bodies to get to the top of the mountain, the top of the ladder, to be the one that has the most power, right? Whereas Thorfinn... We're going to put him here. Thorfinn is being drugged down by the dead bodies. Back in the Oath, they were all like holding on to Thorfinn and they were trying to drag him down. So it's curious because, again, anytime Sven's head's talking, that's actually Canute talking to himself. So Canute is like trying to pep talk himself, being like, "Yep, just keep killing people. The more bodies I got, the higher the pile, and that means I'll be at the top of the pile, which means I'll be on top and in charge and in control." Whereas Thorfinn takes it the entire opposite direction and says, "No, these dead bodies are dragging me down to hell. I don't like that." So yeah, it's fascinating how Canute reasons that this is the better alternative and that he tries to put a positive spin on it, right? It's a positive spin on mass murder. It's fine. Totally fine. And then we have all the seagulls and everything. And then, of course, we have Leif. Before we go back to Canute, we have Leif. And I'm very curious how Thorgal has such a great relationship with Leif. Thorgel's like, you did it. You got us out there. Ha, ha, ha. And he's like, just you wait. I'll buy all your stuff for triple the price. But Leif doesn't care about that. He just wants to go find Thorfinn. And Thorgel says that he'll sell Thorfinn to Leif. And I'm like, well, Ketil already promised his freedom, and Ketil doesn't address this situation in this episode, so I feel like it's going to be awkward later when Thorfinn's like, I thought I was free. And Thorgel might try to, like, sell him off to Leif as part of their promise. Leif just wants to find Thorfinn. He just wants to find him and see if it's Thor's kid or not, and then go from there. That's all he wants to do. And then you have, Bug Eyes that's joining along, so, interesting. He says, I wouldn't smuggle criminals out of mere kindness. And I love the sunset. The animation on all of them looks really, really good. But poor Ketil. Ketil just wants to cry in his barrel. He does not want to come out, right? And then poor Olmar. That shot of Olmar on the side of the ship where he's like putting his head in his hands is heartbreaking. It's very sad indeed. Very sad indeed. Meanwhile, we go back to Thorfinn. And Thorfinn and Olmar are like tilling up the land, and they call it a day, and Thorfinn can sense there's something in the wind. Just seems like tragedy's at hand. I'm not getting good vibes. And Einar's like, isn't the sunset captivating? And I'm like, no, Thorfinn's got angst vision on. He's got the radar. He's sensing that there's tragedy ahead. It's like the strings of fate are intertwining, right? Connecting Thorfinn back to Canute. And he's like, no. He's like, the sunset's not captivating. Something is on the horizon. Something ominous. And yeah, you have red sky at night, sailor's delight, right? And then as Thorfinn's like, I sense something ominous, Canute says these words, right? Canute says, mock me. Mock me if you wish. It's like he's just like, he thinks like everybody's against me, right? Everyone's an enemy. Mock me if you wish. Curse me if you must. Yes. Curse me if you must. Mock me if you wish. Curse me if you must. And then he says, I do all of this to create my utopia. Yep. I do all of this to create my utopia. All right. I love the sunset against him. He looks so good. Canute's just like, yes. And then his eyes soften for a brief bit. All for lost love. All right. Okay. And then, of course, we have the end song, the Edie, that says, there is no freedom without love, right? So, okay. This is all rather interesting because it's, you could say, well, what is the lost love? Well, someone in the comments was saying, I said, Canute lost his innocence when Askeladd died, and somebody in the comments was like, no, it was when Ragnar died. And I was like, yes, that is, I stand corrected. That is very much the case. When Ragnar died, that's when Canute lost his innocence, right? So the idea of this lost love, the idea the moment he lost love, he lost his innocence and realized how cruel the world could be, right? That the world was a cruel, cruel place. And so Canute decided, well, I'm going to create a paradise for myself that won't be cruel. And the only way to do that is to eliminate all possibilities of there being that cruelty. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my kingdom strong enough to where nobody will bother us and our people, and we will have this utopia. And if you want to mock me for what I'm doing, if you want to curse me for the ways that I'm doing it, fine. But this is what I want to do, and this is how I'm going to do it, and I have the means, and I'm going to take my chances. So, obligatory Attack on Titan spoilers. Again, I wanted to create a video a while back that was talking about Thorfinn and like several protagonists that all had similarities, and Thorfinn was going to be thrown in the mix there. Like when I just watched season 1 of Vinland Saga, I was like, okay, you got Shinji, you have Eren, and you could throw in Thorfinn. I'll just throw in Thorfinn. Which now, Canute is Eren. Canute is season 4 Eren. Absolutely. Like, the parallels are so there. Like, mock me if you wish, curse me if you must. I mean, if you listen to the lyrics to Rumbling, it's like, yeah, you know, if I lose it all, trip and fall, will you laugh at me? Like, it's Canute. Like, Canute is in the same boat that Aaron is. He's lost for the lost love. Like, you know, Aaron, it was his mother. It was the members of Levi's squad. It was his family, his friends. For Canute, it was Ragnar. And so he's like, it's his siblings, possibly. He's like, you know, my lost love that I had and like my innocence, it all being, and he's like, and the things that I hold dear are at stake. And so he's like, I have these things at my disposal. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be violent, and I'm going to pursue I'm going to embrace this darkness, and it will help me create a utopia where the things I care about cannot be hurt anymore. And so for Aaron, it's like, I'm going to create the Rumbling and destroy the world to save my little pocket of friends and create our little utopia on parody. And for Canute, it's like, I'm going to destroy all of our enemies and make it to where Denmark and England are these paradises for myself and my people. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. And it's like, okay, well, that's good. There's lots of problems with that, but that's, you know, you do you. But what's interesting is that while Aaron has, you know, thousands of giant 50-meter titans that can easily help him accomplish this task, Canute does not. And that's kind of where things get rather interesting, is that Canute does not exactly have the resources to sustain this utopia he wants to sustain the means by which he's creating his utopia. He doesn't exactly have, you know, that sustainability in place, whereas you could argue different things for Aaron. So that's interesting, right? But if I'm being honest, I kind of prefer Canute a little bit to Aaron, because Canute has this like weird dark quirkiness where he's talking to his father's severed head or whatever. I kind of think that's really, it's fun and it's dark and twisted, and, you know, Aaron's just kind of doom and gloom and quiet. I think that's my problem with Aaron in Attack on Titan at times in season 4, is that he's very quiet. And we don't get into Aaron's head, right? Now, I haven't seen part 3. Don't tell me any spoilers, please. And don't tell me any manga spoilers, please. But I feel like Aaron in season 4, part 2, he's so quiet and we don't get into his head a lot. Aaron needed a talking Grisha head to speak to throughout the season for me to really appreciate his character and his perspective, like I am with Canute. But Canute and Aaron are very similar in what they want and the means in which they're getting it. And those means, you understand why he's doing it. There's a lot of problems with it. And the sustainability, especially on Canute's end, leaves a lot to be desired, right? And that's not to say that Thorfinn is entirely right, because, yeah, idealistically, we'd all like there to be no violence and peace, but there's going to be conflict. And I think that's going to be Thorfinn's next challenge is, okay, you want to have this goal of peace. Well, you're about to have a conflict happen because Canute is coming to knock at your door and is going to potentially bring this conflict to you. Now, how are you going to handle it? That's going to be the big question. And that's what I'm very interested in seeing, is how is Thorfinn going to handle the fight that is headed their way? Because Thorfinn's had 3 years to pull it together and have these Zen moments. So now what are we going to do? What's coming? And it's Floki of all people coming to his doorstep. So yeah. Lots of things to think about. But again, Canute and Thorfinn, I love them for very different reasons as characters. I get excited to see Canute dive deeper into the madness, but I'm very concerned for Thorfinn, obviously. And I'm hoping that everything's going to be okay with him. So we'll see, right? We'll see. But I'm very curious, y'all, to know what you all thought of this episode and your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. This episode is good, but it's got a lot coming, and I'm gonna be excited to see what happens next. So in any case, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 13 of Vinland Saga. Bye.